Hi, welcome to MentoMind. What you see by default is the admin view. So in MentoMind, we have three different views depending upon what kind of access you have. Now let's switch to teacher view. So teacher view is only available to the tutors or teachers. What they see is this list of all their students, all their classes, the curriculum which is available to them, and all the reports. Now obviously the teachers don't have access to admin account. They will only see the teacher view and they don't have access to admin. But if you give them admin access, they will have access to both the teacher view as well as the admin view. So let's talk about the teacher view. So the first thing you can see is the learning library, which is where all the learning material is shown here. We also have added guides for each of the tutors. So for example, if they are a SAT math tutor, we have suggested for each session what they should be covering, what is the sequence of things. So for example, in session 1, what should they be covering with the student, what should they be assigning to the student, then session 2, what are the topics and categories that they need to cover. So all that. So there is a guide for the tutors, especially new tutors who are just getting into the SAT, ACT prep, and they can use this. But obviously they don't have to, but this is just a guide which is available. Similarly for the verbal tutor. Now for each of the subjects, we have like math resources. There is a math section format. That means on the SAT, how does the math section look like? There is a guide for each topic. So for example, if I click on percentages here, it explains all about this topic, what kind of questions that are in the SAT, what does an easy question looks like, how does a hard question look like, any strategies and all that. So that's all covered within this topic guide of percentages. Similarly, reading and writing resources, you have the same structure where you have a little bit of information about what students see on the exam, the total time, what kind of questions, the scoring and all that. And then there are guides for each of the topics. So this is the learning library. Then you have the list of all the students. Obviously, this is the new setup, so you don't have the student list, all the classes, all the reports. Now here is some sample data from one of our test accounts. So I'm in the teacher view. So you can see the list of all my students I'm tutoring currently. So let's choose one of the student here. And as you can see, for this student, there are like 4 different options here. Assignment, these are all the homework assignments that the student is currently working on. So as a tutor, I can track all the homework, where the student is struggling, what are the things that are not getting done, things like those. So I can track all the homework assignment from this tab. The second tab is the test report. So this is where I can see all the test results. So for example, in this case, the student has taken a mini practice test with this scoring, and then there is a full and diagnostic test that the student has taken. The third is the skills tab. So this is where I can see what are those topics and subtopics where the student is struggling the most, or what is the current skill level on each of those topics. So you can see the student has, in some topics the student is at advanced level. There are other topics where the student is at the intermediate or beginner level. Similarly in math, you can see. Now all these levels get set once the student has done something on the platform. So for example, when the student starts, they are prompted for an initial diagnostic test. And that diagnostic test, after taking that test, all these levels get set. So tutor has pretty good idea, what should the student be working on next. And if you have chosen the automation option, then the student automatically receives the homework assignment based on the performance on the test. The last tab is the activity tab. So this is where you as a tutor can track everything that the student is doing. Like every single question the student has attempted, for example, in last 7 days. What are those questions they're getting wrong? So I can say, okay, show me everything that the student has gotten wrong in the last 7 days. And I can further filter based on the topics, the content domain, the subject, and all that. So this is kind of an activity list for the student. Now, if I'm meeting a student every week, for example, I can simply say, let me go over everything that a student has gotten wrong. Let's see what those topics are, and then based on that I can assign more homework. or I will let the system do it for me by automating the assignments. So now let's come back to the test reports. As you can see, there are 2 tests that a student has taken. Let's look into the result. This is the full length diagnostic test, so I'm going to say view result. So this is their test report. What you can see is the overall test score range. It shows 1230 to 1280. That's the score range for the student. In the bottom, you can see the score range for the reading and writing and the score range for math. And since this test is adaptive, you can see the student has done well on the module 1. That's why they got the harder module, the second one. Similarly, for math also, the student did well on the module 1, so they got the harder module 2. So this is the high-level information, scoring information about this test. The tutors can download this test report in formats. So one is a visually appealing kind of report, which you can see right now, which is more for parents. And then there is a second report, which is a tabular report, which is a simple list of everything the student has gotten wrong. So a flat list of all the questions. And maybe this tabular one is more appropriate for tutors to analyze the performance of the student. So now let's look into the details of each section and module. So I click on the first module, which is the reading and writing. And you can see how the student has done with easy, medium, and hard questions. So you can see the student had more struggle with the easy questions. Maybe the student was rushing into solving those questions faster and did some silly mistakes there. You can see medium and hard questions performance. Then you can also see how the student has done on each of those categories and topics. So you can see craft and structure, the student did everything right. But in expression of ideas, the student only had 2 right and 4 wrong. And you can expand that to see what those specific topics and subtopics are, where the student struggled the most. Now, as you can see, a tutor can directly assign homework for those areas where the student struggled the most. So you can see there is an option to assign more practice for rhetorical synthesis, because that's where the student gotten 2 questions wrong. And lastly, in this tab, you can see the timer chart. So how long the student took to solve each question. So in this module, you can see there are 27 questions. And for each of the questions, these are the times. And the green bars are the right answers. And the red bars are the wrong answers. And then you also see this orange line. This basically shows on average how long the other students are taking to solve the same question. So you can see in some cases the student is taking way longer than on average how long the other students are taking to solve the same question. So this gives you another perspective of maybe the student needs to work on some strategies to solve the questions faster. So it's not only about solving the question, but solving the question in time so that they can give other time for other questions. Similarly, you can see all the different tabs, how the student has done. Now, if you want to go into the details of the report, like every single question, how the student performed, this is how you do. You click on the View Solutions button and you can see the performance of the student on each of the questions. You can see that there are some questions that the student has answered incorrectly, and there are some questions that student hasn't even attempted. So you can go on those and see how the student has done. So for example, question number 5, the student took 68 seconds. It's a linear functions question, and then it's an application of linear functions in problem solving or word problems. So you can see the student answered it wrong. And for every question, we have the explanation, step by step, how to solve the question. And then there is also a video that shows how to solve the question. Now, when a tutor is reviewing it with the student, they have access to this Desmos calculator, so they can show the student how to solve the question faster using Desmos. They also have access to this tool, which is an annotation tool, where the tutors or the teachers can directly annotate, show them how to solve it, draw directly a question screen, highlight certain things, like as if they are doing it on a paper using pen. So they can do the same thing directly on the screen, and then they can save these annotations or notes for the student. And so the advantage of this is that the student can always come back and review these notes. They don't have to keep track of all the papers and PDFs and all that, so everything can be within the platform. So that's how the report looks like. And the tutors and students can analyze and see what are the things they need to work on most, whether it's how to solve it or how to solve it faster. Now, if the automated assignment is on, then the student will automatically get the assignments based on their performance on the test. And tutors can still review and see what those assignments are. And if they want, they can assign additional stuff to the student. Based on that, they were assigned certain topic guides, certain set of practice questions. There are some skill upgrade assignments that were assigned to the student. And there are some assignments that the student is still working on, for example, cross-text connections. The student hasn't started yet. And then there is another one where the student is already started, but they still haven't achieved their goal of reaching into intermediate level in that topic. So this is how the tutors can track the homework assignments and then obviously track the overall skills for the student. Now, how do I create a homework assignment as a tutor? I'm going to go back to the assignment. I'm going to say create new, and I can give a title, say homework week 1, or maybe a specific topic. Then I choose the start date and due date. Now these dates are important because the start date is when the student starts seeing the assignment in their list. So if you are planning for some future work, then you choose the start date of when they should start seeing the homework assignment. And the due date is important also because based on this due date, the system reminds the student to complete their homework. So if it's only 3 days remaining and the student hasn't even started the assignment, there will be a reminder email going out to the student and the parent, reminding them about the upcoming due date. Then you have the type of homework assignment. So this says practice untimed, but there are other options. Practice untimed means simply a set of practice questions without a timer. And then you can choose the specific topics that you want to assign homework from. So you can say nonlinear functions, linear functions is one variable, and maybe you can also choose one of the reading and writing topics. And then the next thing you do is you just choose the number. So how many questions you want to assign from easy, medium, and hard questions. For example, you can say, okay, I know this student is an advanced level student, so let me assign more hard questions to give them extra practice. So I say, okay, 0 and 6 nonlinear functions, and I guess 0 and 10 hard questions of linear equations in one variable. So you simply put the number of questions that you want to assign, and the system automatically determines what is the right set of questions that should be given to the student. And the tutors can see what those questions are going to be before they assign. So I can say view questions, and these are all those 21 questions. And the system makes sure that these questions are not too hard or not too easy for the student, and also makes sure that the student hasn't seen these questions before. So this is the most appropriate set of questions. But the tutors can always review and maybe remove those questions from that homework assignment, so they have the flexibility. But otherwise, it automatically takes care of choosing the right set, and then the tutors can simply just assign the homework to the student. So now obviously there are options like, instead of simply untimed practice, you can also assign a problem set, which is a pre-created set of questions that your admin might have created. So if you're an admin, you can create problem sets by managing that course to the admin view. So right now there are no problem sets that are available, but you can create problem sets, and then that's what you choose from this list. Then there is an option for practice tests. So you can choose one of the practice tests that's available, that list. There is a vocab test that you can choose, anything that the student has missed in last 7 days or last 15 days or last 30 days. So you can reassign the question that the student has been missing. Then you have the quiz. Quiz is similar to the practice test, but with the timer. So you can say, okay, I want to assign a quiz and this quiz be 10 minutes, for example, and then you can still choose the same number of questions. So if you want to choose, maybe in this case, you only want to assign command of evidence, you can simply just have command of evidence as the option, and you can say, okay, I want to assign maybe 10 medium questions and no hard questions, and the same thing you can do. The only difference here is that now it's not simply a set of practice questions, it's a set of practice questions with a timer of 10 minutes. Now, if you want to be more precise in your homework assignment, that means like within, for example, in this case, command of evidence, if you want to assign more at a subtopic level, so there are different type of command of evidence questions that appear on the SAT, so you can be a little more precise. So for example, you can say, okay, I want to assign questions that are related to compare data, so more quantitative type of questions within the command of evidence. So every topic on MentoMind, we have broken them down into subtopics that lets you be more precise on when you're assigning homework or when you're tracking student performance. So you can simply say here, okay, I want to assign support or refute a claim in which the data gets interpreted, and I want to assign 5 medium questions to the student. And again, you can view those questions first before you choose to assign them. So that's how you assign homework. The last thing here is the learning guide. So you can also assign a learning guide to the student. So you can say, okay, linear equation 2 variable study guide. Let me view it first. So this is how you assign homework, track student progress, look at their test reports, look at their skills, and track all their activity. Now there are reports that are available to you as a tutor, so you can see all your students' performance in one view. So you can say, okay, let me see all my students, whether they are belonging to a class or the current students, what they have done in last 7 days, their performance, how many questions they have attempted. So this is the list of all the students the tutor is tutoring. And then you can see what students I need to talk to, where do I need to intervene and help out so that the student can improve on their skills. That's it from my side for today. Thank you.